Hello dear students, welcome to another episode of our English lessons designed for grade 11 students. In this lesson, dear students, we are going to talk about verbs in general and differentiate between stative and dynamic verbs. We are going to see some compound nouns and how to form them, and we'll end up our lesson with some practice on language functions. So please stay with us and we'll be back just after this short break. Welcome back, dear students. I hope you are ready to follow with me this lesson, which, as I said earlier, is going to be about Unit 11, the grammar section. And in this section, we're going to talk about verbs, either as stative or dynamic verbs. So what are stative and dynamic verbs? All right? As the words imply, a stative is a verb which talks or describes a state, whereas dynamic are verbs which describe actions. Sometimes we call them action verbs. Okay, now please let's go and see the difference between stative and dynamic verbs. In English, verbs can be classified in two categories, which are stative verbs and dynamic verbs. All right? We are going to talk about each one in isolation. Now, dynamic verbs, sometimes referred to as action verbs, usually describe actions we can take or things that happen. Example of these action verbs could be play, run, swim, ride, cook, drive, etc. So from these examples, you can see that action verbs or dynamic verbs are all verbs that describe actions, things we do. All right? In contrast, stative verbs usually refer to a state or condition which is not changing or likely to change. Sometimes a stative verb describes a state or a condition which is in fact true and cannot change. Now let's see examples. Stative verbs cannot normally be used in the continuous form, that is be plus ing. This is why a stative verb cannot be used in the progressive forms and does not take an ing, because it describes a general state or condition which is not liable to change. For example, let's see some stative verbs and some dynamic verbs. Under stative verbs, we have verbs that describe a state or condition, and normally they cannot be used in the progressive form. On the other hand, dynamic verbs describe actions and can be used in all forms. With action verbs, we can use present continuous, present perfect, and things like that. Whereas with stative verbs, we use only the simple form. We are going to see some extra examples to clarify things. Here I have a list of stative verbs which can describe either thoughts or feelings. For instance, under thoughts we have realize, suppose, suspect, reckon, consent, contradict, anticipate, believe, dread, expect, know, and think. All these describe our thinking, our reasoning. You say, I think it's going to rain. This is my opinion, I think. Or I expect, or I realize, and things like that. As for feelings, we have verbs like fear, hate, like, love, prefer, doubt, and seem. They describe your feelings. Okay? Now we have thinking verbs with examples. For example, the word or the verb know. We can say, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. And remember that we cannot use we are not knowing. We can't say we are not knowing. This is incorrect English. We say we don't know what to do. As for realize, you can say, do you realize how disappointed I am? Do you realize? Again, the present simple. Suppose, I suppose she's spent all her money. I suppose also means I think. Understand, I don't understand much about science. I don't understand. Again, we cannot say I'm not understanding. Agree, I agree with you. Believe, he believes everything he reads in the newspaper. Expect, do you expect to see him tomorrow? And not are you expecting? Although sometimes it could be possible, but we are going to see it later. Suspect, I suspect she's caught my cold. Think, do you think things are getting better? And reckon, I reckon to leave at 3 o'clock. All right? These are some of the stative verbs which describe thinking. Now how about the feeling verbs? That is, verbs that describe feelings. For example, fear, I fear the world is becoming a dangerous place. Or hate, some animals hate the rain. Like, she likes animals, and love, he loves activity holidays. Again, we cannot say he is loving or he is hating. But still, sometimes we can use stative verbs in the progressive form, but in this case, their meaning changes. As it is mentioned here, when we use stative verbs in the continuous form, their meaning changes. For example, if you say, I think we should protect wild animals. Here, the verb think is a stative verb and it doesn't take a progressive form. So it means simply I believe, and we consider it as a stative verb. Whereas if you say, I am thinking about getting a bike, I am thinking. Here, the progressive form changes the meaning of the verb. And in this case, it means I am considering, right? I am studying the case or the idea or suggestion of getting a bike. So, in general, stative verbs are in the simple form, but sometimes they take the progressive form, and in this case, their meaning changes. And we have an example here of think and I'm thinking. Another example could be, I expect things will improve. And if in this case, expect means here believe. But if we change the form of the verb and say, I am expecting a call from my friend, here I'm expecting means I am waiting for. So you see, waiting for is completely different from believe. Simply by changing the form of the verb, the meaning changes. All right? Now let's do some exercises, that is, checking our understanding of stative and dynamic verbs. Here you have some sentences which contain mistakes, and your job is to correct these mistakes. The first one says, it is seeming you don't realize what dangerous the situation is. We have two mistakes, is seeming and what. Now the first one is seeming. What is your proposal for correcting this mistake? For the second one, what? You don't realize what dangerous. Okay, the answer is it seems instead of is seeming, and how instead of what. It seems you don't realize how dangerous the situation is. Another example, I am supposing you have finished all your homework, and you have to correct the two underlined words, that is, I am supposing and finish. Of course, the first one will take the simple form instead of the progressive form, and we say I suppose, and finish becomes finished because it is followed by the auxiliary verb have. So I suppose you have finished all your homework. Another example, I expect a letter from you since a long time. Again, we change expect and since. But here, notice that instead of the simple form, we need the progressive form of the verb expect. And the answer will be, I have been expecting a letter from you for a long time. Instead of since, we have for, because it is followed by a duration of time. So, since we have the word for, we need to use the present perfect continuous and not the simple present. And remember, when I talked about the progressive form, it could be present progressive or present perfect or any other forms that take the ing form. All right. Another one, I am not agreeing with you which fear change. I'm not agreeing with people which fear change becomes I don't agree with people who fear change. So instead of I'm not agreeing becomes I don't agree, and instead of the relative pronoun which, we have the who. Okay, now we have done with this part of our lesson. We are going to see something different, which is compound nouns. Now compound nouns are nouns made or formed with two words, two different nouns. Words can be combined to form compound nouns. These are common in English. In English, it's common to have a noun which is composed of two nouns, and we call these as compound nouns. For example, they normally have two parts. These compound nouns have two parts. The first one, the second part identifies the object. The second part of the compound noun talks about the object, like man, tongue, table, room. The first part tells us what kind of object or person it is, or what is its purpose. For example, police, water, dining, and bed. So if we say policeman, the first part, which is police, is talking about the purpose or what kind of noun the second noun is. Man is the noun itself. So policeman, police is the purpose or the kind of thing or person, and man is the person or object itself. To illustrate things, let's have a look at this table which shows the compound nouns as separated nouns. We have police and man. So the first type, police, it shows what type of person the man is, or the purpose. We talk about policeman, water tank, dining table, and bedroom. So remember that the first noun describes the second noun. So when you say policeman, that is, the police is the purpose or the type of man, and then the second one is the person or the thing itself that we are talking about. Water tank, the same. It is a tank, but what kind of tank it is? It is water tank. The same for table. We are talking about table, but what type of table? It is a dining table. And the same for room. There are many rooms, so which room are we talking about? We are talking about bedroom. I hope this is clear. Now let's move and talk a little bit more about compound nouns, especially when it comes to spelling. The two parts may be written in a number of ways. There are different ways of writing compound nouns, either as one word, like policeman and bedroom, or as two words joined with a hyphen, a small dash between the two words, like in dining table, and as two separate words, like fish tank. Now, whether the compound noun is used as one word or separated words or with a hyphen, we need to refer to our dictionaries to make sure of the spelling of these compound nouns. Now it's your task to match the words to make compound nouns. Now we have a list of nouns and another list. You have to join the two to make new compound nouns. Now animal, do we say animal change or animal size or animal fumes or animal habitat or animal warming? What do you think? Excellent, that's good. Animal habitat. Another one, climate. Do we say climate change, size, fumes, or warning? Yes, it is climate change. And global, size, fumes, or warming? Great, we talk about global warming. And landfill, site or fumes, it becomes easier. So it is landfill site. And the last one, exhaust fumes. Excellent. So these are our compound nouns. Now it's done with compound nouns. We move to something different, which is language functions. When it comes to language functions, we are talking about the way we use language to convey a message or to deliver a message. Now, in language functions, mainly we talk about opinion, suggestion, warning, etc. Today we are going to talk about expressing opinion. Now, if you want to express opinion, you have different options depending on whether you want to be formal or informal. For example, when you talk to your friends, you use informal language. That is, the expressions which will appear at the bottom. But if you are talking to your manager or to your school principal or someone you respect a lot and there is some social difference between you and him, you need to use some formal language, that is, expressions which will be at the top. So when talking about or expressing opinions, you can say, personally, I think, I believe, so and so. This is informal language. If you want to be a little bit more formal, you can say, I feel so and so. It means that my opinion is this or that. And if you want to be formal, you can say, in my opinion. In my opinion, today is hot or today is cold. So you give your opinion in a formal way. So we have here an example. In my opinion, birds should not be kept in cages. So is this expression formal or informal? Of course. You see that in my opinion is at the top of our scale. So it is formal English. Another expression, we have guessing. Now the same, you can express guessing in different forms, whether formal or informal. In informal language, you can say, I guess, or I imagine. But formal expressions, you can say, it's quite likely that. And here you express also guessing. Our example would be, it's quite likely that there might be a rise in oil prices. So do you think this expression is expressed by a person who was formal or informal? You see, it's quite likely that. This is formal English. Another expression or suggestion, we have suggestion. Again, either informal or formal. Why not is informal. You might try, this is something in between. And formal English, you can say, may I suggest that? Our example would be, may I suggest that you find new sources of energy? And it is, again, a formal expression of using suggestions. Warning, if you want to warn, again you have choices between whether you want to be formal or informal. In informal English, you can say, look out to your friends or to your brother. But somewhat formal, be careful. And very formal, excuse me, be careful. And our example would be, excuse me, be careful, it's not safe to park here. Right? So this is a formal way of expressing warning. Now we are going to do some practice using these expressions and keeping in mind the degree of formality for each expression. Now, what would you say in the following situations? Your friend asks you what life will be like in 2050. Here, your friend, you are talking to your friend. So are you going to be formal or informal? Yes, of course, informal, just casual English or everyday English. And what function are you going to use? He's asking you about what will happen in the future, what life will be like in 2050. You are going to express, yes, guessing. So you can say, I guess or I think it might be more advanced. Another situation, your school principal wants to know what sport activities your school club should introduce. Here you are talking to your school principal. So are you going to use formal or informal English? Of course, formal. And which function are you going to use? Your school principal wants to know. So you are going to suggest. So you express suggestion in a formal way. In this way you can say, may I suggest that you think of tennis? This is a very formal way of expressing suggestion. Another example, your brother plays computer games all the time. Here you are talking to your brother. So are you going to be formal or informal? Of course, informal. And which function are you going to use? Your brother plays computer games. Maybe warning. All right? So you can say, be careful, you need to take a rest. So please notice here that we have different expressions depending on the formality of the speaker. So that was the end for this lesson, and it's all I have prepared for today's lesson. I hope you have learned how to differentiate between stative and dynamic verbs, how to use compound nouns, and how to use functions with a degree of formality. Until I see you next time, have a good time and goodbye.